All right, Gator fans, happy Sunday Eve. I'm hoping that some of us are recovering from our Saturday. I am hanging out with one of my all time favorites, Shannon Snell, All American offensive guard, former NFL player, Gator alumni, Gator always. I don't like when we say former Gator, it's always Gator. Shannon, interesting weekend for our Florida Gators.
Yeah, it was a really interesting weekend. It wasn't quite exactly what we thought it was going to be, or maybe it was. I'm not really sure. Just depending on what side of the fence you're standing on. But um, not me. I was kind of hoping they would come out and play better against LSU, and for all intents and purposes, the defense was great. I think when you can hold LSU to 13 points, whatever it was, that's a huge win. I know they're having some offensive struggles, but those guys were really flying around and making things happen. It's just that where we are offensively is really not a good place.
Okay, so I want to get into the LSU game, but I want to talk a little bit more generally first. What's your general reaction to the season so far? I mean, obviously LIU is a cupcake, but they took care of business, 55
hmm
nothing. And I mean, and maybe you saw USF coming. I did not. But what's your reaction so far?
It's kind of hindsight's 2020. I thought USF was a good team. You watch them against Boise and all that stuff that happened, and you're like, okay, man, they got some things, but I think offensively, I thought they had some explosiveness and they were better than they ever had been. But now looking back on it, we really just crapped the bed when we played them. I think we left so much stuff on the table, and then you watch them play Miami, and Miami just dismantles them. It's like, hey, man, we got to play this team, and the part that's just like I just can't wrap my head around, Allie, and this is the part that I just I think about, and it's the amount of talent that's on this football team, and the guys that we have, the playmakers that we have. I didn't know if Billy was ever going to build that talent up past when Mullen left, and what that looked like. You were always competing against in-state people, such as or competing against Florida State and Miami, but you're also competing against like USF and UCF, and then you're competing against Georgia. Now Texas is in the SEC, so I didn't think Billy was ever going to build that roster to a point that it was a title contender. But as you looked at it before the season, it was like, man, these guys are pretty daggone good. There's a lot of good talent on this team. Not to mention he recruited a lot of good talent, which was really encouraging. But if this isn't the like classic case of underachieving, then I don't know what is. It sucks. It sucks to watch because of, and maybe the part that makes me upset is that this team underachieves. And we've lost games not only this season but in past seasons because at the end of the season we closed it out really well. I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be a carryover. He's finally hit the turn in the road,
Right.
and then all of a sudden it looks like we did when we started last season when we played Miami, and then Texas A&M comes in and puts a whooping on us, and now it's like we're in the red zone again. Like literally red zone, meaning like it's the scary zone where we don't know what it's going to be on a daily basis. And I'm sick of I hate the roller coasters where you don't know what it's going to be. You don't know what it's going to do yet. You're just praying every Saturday that you see competent football, but yet there's always something that's just always missing.
So let's talk about that for a second because I agree with you. I mean I thought he was dead in the water after Texas A&M. I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure there's a great chance you and I were sitting here discussing this in this exact same scenario after we lost to Texas A&M, and they really did turn the corner. And we speculated that that's when Ron Roberts took over the defense. There were some changes that happened, and Florida played better. We did think that that would carry over, but it's almost like we hit restart on the movie every season and it, starts over from the beginning. But what do you attribute that to? And what could they have done differently to continue the momentum?
You know, you want to. I know what it's like playing football in the SEC. I get it. It's a tough conference. And really any conference across America from the that you may go to the ACC, wherever you may end up in, it's a tough conference. It's tough to win. I get that's what when you're playing at the highest level of college football. But when you have a team and we keep talking about the standard that probably needs to be addressed is that the standard that we have is that the standard was set a long time ago of winning. Like if you were a Gator fan and you were born past the year or started comprehending football past the year of 1996, there was a standard set then, right? It's like when you buy your wife a Louis Vuitton purse, you can't go backwards from that, right? You can't go back to like
Yep. Nobody
one of
knows
those.
anymore.
Yeah, and I don't mean it like that, but I'm just saying it's like when if getting all A's in high school, you get all A's in high school, your parents are going to always expect you to get all A's. They're going to expect you to say, "Hey, you have the ability to do it."
Yeah.
It's just that do you have the will and want to? I think the Gators from the time of the Steve Spurriers and the Urban Meyers and everything in between, those guys had set somewhat of a standard. And they were supposed to live up to that standard. Some of those guys got fired because they didn't hit that standard. I'm just wondering now, has our standard been lowered because we just haven't been back there for such a long time? And if it has, then that sucks. I can't. I truly can't get with that. I'm a competitor. I think a lot of people that watch Gator football or that are true followers of the game or that are former players or are former athletes that gone to the University of Florida, they watch Gator football and they want them to do well and they want them to be competitive. But Ali, I think back and I think about this whole standard thing. It's like I don't even know what the standard is. Like is the standard started 4 years ago with Billy Napier beating Utah, and when he beat Utah, I was like, man, this guy has set a standard at this, and he did it with a team that he knew nothing about. Right? He had
Right.
Anthony Richardson, who was unproven. He had a bunch of guys, and he went out there and he made some just great decisions. And we thought, okay, we're in a new era. We don't have to look back at what Urban did or what Steve. We don't have to live in the past. But now here we are, and this whole standard is what are we? Who are we? Because we have no identity of uh, what we are, what we look like, or how we are going to be moving forward. And that's the part that's not only frustrating, it's when you have questions like that over your head, your fan base is like,
We lost Shannon. Hopefully he will pop right back in. And until he does, I'm going to read a couple of the comments on the side because I know he will try and sign right back in. High Top says, "Up there, Shannon."
there, sorry,
All
cut
right,
out.
no, you're good. You are good. Okay, so let's this standard. So, I mean, I think an argument can be made that Steve Spurrier said it when he won an SEC title that was eventually taken away in 1990. And I mean, there's an 84 team that was stripped of an SEC title and was voted as a national title in some polls. So, I think the argument can be made that the standard was set really in the early 80s. We're going to see if Shannon hops right back in here so I can continue to talk that out with him. But let's see. High Top, I pray to God to deliver DJ from throwing more of these picks. It's always go Gators, go Gators. UCLA fired their coach today. So did Virginia Tech. The conversation we had at Spurrier's that one night with Eric was correct. That is true. Okay, Shannon. So what I was saying before you popped back out was that 84, they won an SEC title. It was taken away because of sanctions. They were voted as national champion in a couple different polls in 84. Spurrier had that one in 90 that, sanctions kept Florida from having. But I think the standard is SEC titles. I would love for the standard to be national titles every year, obviously. I don't know that that's the case, but I think SEC titles is at a minimum where the standard is. And Florida needs to be at least competitive in the SEC they've got to fight for an SEC title almost every single year. I personally think that's where the standard is. And when you think back to coaches that we fired, I think about Will Muschamp. He was close to an SEC championship game in 2012. Mullen made an SEC championship game. I think that's got to be where it is. It's definitely not 20 and 21. We're going to see if Shannon can hop back in here with us. But while he figures his internet out, I will continue to read you guys some of the comments. High Top's referring to a conversation with my husband, Eric, who has told us before the season started that this was going to be how the season played out, unfortunately. Shannon, you there? Okay, no worries. We're back. Okay, so I was just saying, I think an SEC championship appearance is the standard and is the floor, in my opinion. Florida needs to hit those routinely, even if they're not winning them every single year. Making a real push to play in a conference championship game each year is a decent standard, I think.
Yeah, it's been a while since we played in one.
Mullen had us there. We didn't win, but Mullen.
Right, he had us there, but it's just been a long time since we've been in one. So I don't know if that's the standard, Allie, because and maybe it is, maybe a championship, and guys, these guys have list of goals every single year, and that's great and that's
Well, we're
wonderful.
firing these coaches for a reason, right? And so the coaches that we fired previous to Napier, most of them actually got to an SEC championship. They didn't win them, but they got there. But if they're getting there and not winning and they're still getting fired, they're not hitting whatever the standard is by the UAA's description, right?
No, they're not, and the weird thing is that there's been coaches that have been fired for less than what we're seeing this season. I mean, let's just be
Ron
real.
Cook's pissed.
Yeah, I mean, it's, between Mullen and Muschamp and McElwain, and there's been some issues that have happened there. Whether you can go back and read about them if you don't know. But in the
Sure.
same breath as that, I continuously scratch my head, and maybe it's the fact that Billy has said the right things, has done some of the right things with the players, but at the end of
Yeah,
the day, he's not winning football games,
right.
and we all pay. Saturdays, those people in the stands and those boosters and those fans, they pay tickets to see a really good product. And I don't know if you can pinpoint, other than the end of last season, there was like a little stretch at the end of last season where you saw somewhat of a consistent product and you were hoping he broke out of it. But I think this one's probably more damning because you walk into a season and you see the same stuff, and it's not fun to watch. And you can't. For me personally, and maybe for some others, is that I can't sit here and co-sign on something and say it's sunshine and daisies and rainbows when that is the total furthest thing from the truth. It is not. And as talented of a roster that we have, it means nothing if you can't coach these guys up and win football games.
Let's talk a little bit about DJ Lagway. He had obviously his worst night in orange and blue on Saturday night, and he spent a lot of the offseason hurt with one injury or another. And I think it's easy to say in hindsight, well, I think Napier said something in his press conference like, well, this is really just week 4 of practice. But there was also comments made the whole summer long about how, like, oh, just wait till you see him and, spot the ball and stuff like that, which is, we all took to say, okay, this man of very few words is pretty confident in this team. What do you see going on with Lagway?
Regression. It's very weird because we had this hope that we had the next the great quarterback, and I hope for the same thing. You got a guy that really talks the talk, he walks the walk, he has a good support system, but between the end of last year and the beginning of this year, you saw a lot of regression. And listen, I get it. He's hurt. He was hurt. He had to go through a lot of he had to go through some rehab. But at the end of the day, all right, and this is not a knock because I think if he's going to get his, then God bless him. Is that you're in Jordan commercials and you're in Gatorade commercials and you're in stuff with like Patrick Mahomes and whoever else.
Lamborghini.
Yeah, like that's a lot of power that you have, and with that power, you have to perform. You have to perform, or you will be criticized. And let me tell you something, Allie. When you're throwing interception after interception after interception, I made a comment about this. Is that I get he's got a lot of rust, and that makes a lot of sense. If you're not up to the speed of the game, I get it, right? Not an ideal situation that you're playing in the game, these important games, and you're making these mistakes because those reps count. But there's also those mental reps that DJ probably should have been getting if he wasn't at those times. That if you're throwing a slant, you should see the backer cutting underneath. That's he's playing. They're playing that slant, or you should see some of the stuff like, hey, if you need to throw the ball away, you need to launch that thing out of bounds. You can't throw in the double and triple coverage all the time. When you do those things, you put yourself in a really bad position to put, you're helping your team lose the game. But then on top of that, they criticize your performance because DJ Lagway in 2025 hasn't had an ideal performance based off of his value, based off of where we expected him to be, especially the way he ended last season.
So, you mentioned regression, and I had this conversation with TJ, my producer. I've had this conversation with Eric. Do you think that it's that he regressed, or do you think it's that he didn't take that next step forward and the rest of the league watched film on him all off season and did take a step forward? So now they know exactly what to expect, and he hasn't adapted from that at all because of the time missed this summer.
I would like to say we didn't. I honestly don't think we saw the best of DJ last year. He made some mistakes, and they were just typical freshman mistakes.
Sure.
When we saw Chris Leak go in there, when we seen guys in the past go in and their redshirt freshman or the true freshman season, we've seen them make mistakes. It's the SEC, so I get that. But at the end of but we didn't see the best of him. So I figured a year under his belt, even with him having to go through rehab, maybe a game or two knocking off some of the rust. We were going to get to see that arm, that thing that everybody's talked about, and some of the moxie and stuff that we saw from high school and the polishness that we've seen in college. And we ain't see that.
Yeah.
We ain't see none of that. And that's the part that frustrates us because it's like, oh, damn it, here we go again. Right? We've seen it with so many guys in the past that have been five-star guys that have came out of high school, guys that have were supposed to be the next coming because, post Tebow, we haven't had anything consistent. You know that just as much as I do. It's like the ghosts in Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, climbing those walls. It's like, hey, when can we find a quarterback that will be consistent? I thought DJ was going to be the most surest thing of that, but after last night, after 2 weeks ago, okay, let's knock off the rust. Okay, and now after this past week, is he the guy? Is the real true question. I don't know that. I think he still has to prove his worth, but I think it's even magnified 20 times more now because he is making a lot of money and he is treated somewhat as an independent contractor, as an employee that, that has to prove himself. Listen, scholarships are 1 year renewable. So every year you got to be able to prove that you belong on that football team, even if you are the star quarterback, even if you are a star receiver or star defensive lineman, whatever you are, you have to prove that. And, right now we're 3 games in and it doesn't look super hot.
What are your thoughts on Coach Napier? We're 3 years and 3 games into his tenure, and 20 and 21, terrible on the road.
I mean, gosh, I hate to say it, but after the first couple years, you could see you could see where he wanted to be. You figured, when he first came into the SEC, I know he was an assistant coach at Alabama, and he had been some places at Division One where he was able to garner some experience. But that was good. I thought that was great for him, and I thought that was great for the Gators. But then we get to a point to where we're doing the same things over and over, and we're talking about sometimes the same coaching mistakes that we see every Saturday that exists. And you can't have a group or a large number of people in the stands able to call out what you're going to run next, or that you don't have any offensive creativity because of whatever the reason is going to be. And listen, I was a firm believer on like, hey, let's let them get a system in, let's let this thing play out. But the more I did this, the more I did that, the more I was banging my head against the wall every time the game came on. I didn't let it affect my week because I'm not down there. They don't I'm not on the payroll or none of that stuff. That's not what it is. I'm a firm and staunch supporter, as I still am. But I'm like anybody else. I'm human, and I'm really just tired of seeing. I'm tired of watching our in-state rival have success. Right, Miami and Florida State, and now even USF and UCF. It's like, are we fifth in the pecking order now? Right? Are we? That never was. That, if we talk about a standard, that was never standard where we were the last one in the pecking order when it came to in-state stuff, when it came to in-state talent or winning. That just that doesn't happen like that. I know it's a new day and age, and all this NIL and all this portal and all this stuff changed stuff. But at the end of the day, there's still a way that we need to win football games and find a way to do it despite all these things and all these problems because everybody else is.
I'm going to read you a quote, and I want to get your reaction to it. I wasn't doing the best that I could for our football team. We have a sign in our building that says, do your job, put the team first, embrace your role, put the team first. And I wasn't doing that. I wasn't embracing my role as the head coach. I was trying to hold on to my ego of being the play caller. I spent so much time worried about X's and O's that I forgot about the mindset of our players, making sure that they were ready each and every week. So Eli Drinkwitz said that when asked why he handed over the reins as offensive play caller. Do you think that would make a difference? And is it too late at this point because this is something that should have been handed over a year ago or more?
Yeah. Listen, I would love to tell you I'm an offensive play caller, and I know I have a great offensive mind for football. I know about the offensive line. I know things that happen, but I think Billy's got so much going on that he could have handed that off. He could have delegated that out to somebody. on that staff. There's a staff of a lot of people. There's guys on there that have been with him for a while. There's some guys on there that have great offensive mind. Hell, there's some guys outside of the wall, some guys that are still roaming, looking for a job that are really, really good. But sometimes pride comes before the fall, right? And I think there's a pride in Billy Napier, and I don't have a problem with him being prideful. I don't have a problem with him putting this on his back and saying, "Listen, I'm going to live and die and fall by what happens under my calling." But we failed. We've literally failed. We haven't. We've won some games, but it hasn't been consistent. We haven't sniffed under his tutelage. We haven't really sniffed the SEC title game. We've consistently lost to Georgia, our rivals, Georgia, Florida State, and you know I don't know why, and maybe it's his own reasons. Maybe he'll be able to give you the reason one day when it's further down the road. But I don't know why he hasn't had an offensive play caller. So he can listen. He could probably call the plays in and yes and know them. But at the end of the day, it's like when you're calling the plays and you're doing a lot of things on the sideline when it comes to game day, you're ignoring a lot of the other aspects of the team. Whether it be, hey, are there too many guys on the field on special teams? Or hey, maybe I can nix a defensive call because it's not what I want to call. Or hey, whatever else you want to insert into that category. I think when you're in a place that requires so much of you, you have to be able to release control. And if you're a control freak in this particular conference, it just goes to show you what's going on with Billy Napier right now. It hasn't been very successful, and I don't think it will be.
Let's talk a little bit specifically about Saturday night. What was, I mean, obviously the 5 interceptions were massive. But we can all watch the game and see the 5 interceptions. What would you say was the single biggest issue, though? Was it just him not being able to see anything?
I don't know. I don't know I don't know what the problem was with DJ. It seems like he was confused on a lot of those plays. It seems like he was confused. When LSU would drop people, they would bring them up to the line. Listen, they were bringing blitzes off the side. The offensive line, he's got a little bit of pressure. The offensive line did pretty well, but when he was pressured, it's sometimes a little bit different than what you might get in practice. Practice is almost optimal conditions where you're not having somebody hit your arm, you're not having to move around, and somebody diving at your ankles. When that time gets sped up a little bit, just more than what you would have in an actual practice, that throw could be off a little bit. You could be high. And we've seen some throws from DJ that have been really, really good. But I think he got a little bit out of control. I think he got a little bit desperate. And I think maybe he might be feeling a little bit of the pressure. He might be hearing the chirps and the people saying, hey, listen, you need to do better. And there's a lot of pressure that comes with the money that he's gotten and the things that he's gotten. So I can't understand that. I can't say that I lived in DJ Lagway's shoes. I can say I played there, but there's a lot more that he has to probably deal with as the quarterback of the University of Florida, living in shadows of people that have played before him, people that will play after him, and the people that he's playing for now. So I think there was a little bit of pressure that got to DJ. I don't know if I'm sorry, hang on. I don't know if he conceivably handled it well. I would like to say he was coached for the moment because I think a lot of people have worked with DJ for such a long time. But at the end of the day, he just didn't get it done. And as a sophomore quarterback, this is a guy that's really we really count on to be the next coming, to be the next guy in this program to get things rolling for this offense. And he just didn't get it done, Allie. I don't know there's a better way to say that. And it stinks because he has so much that is riding on his shoulders for Florida to do well and Florida to be a playoff contention team. Yeah. I don't know if the moment's too big for him. I like to say it's not, but I think there's more time for him to prove himself to get to that point. But it's coming to that time where it's running thin.
So one of the things you tweeted about on Saturday night was the fact that Florida went away from Jaden Baugh, which, he is, I think you could argue, the best running back in the SEC, definitely top 3. And your quarterback was struggling. And in the time when he was struggling, you asked him to pass the ball 49 times, which is more than you've ever asked him to pass the ball. what are your thoughts there? Can you even put yourself in a mindset to understand why that was the call?
No, I thought Jaden Ball would. At this point in the season, I think he has a little bit over 37 carries right around. If you watch that guy run the ball, you know he's a special talent. They said he was a special talent. Anybody that's seen him from this year to last year, he was able to even get a lot of touches from Montrell Johnson last year just because he was that good of a running back. You can't keep a guy like that on the bench. You would figure if DJ's struggling, if he has some stuff going on, if he's not filling up the par, if he's just he's not there just yet. You figured that we would formulate a game plan around running him a lot more than what we did. He had 7 carries going into the fourth quarter. 7. A guy like that should not be running, catch or taking handoffs only 7 times going into a fourth quarter in a tight game. I could see if the game is out of hand. I could see if it's like, hey, listen, this is the LSU of 2019 where we got to throw the ball and put up some points. But even at that point, you want to slow the game down. I don't know why we didn't run him. And that's the part that probably frustrates a lot of people is that, and maybe Billy has his own reasons why he did it. Maybe they said, hey, listen, we're going to go into this game and they have some weaknesses at cornerback. But you know what? That offensive line has been lauded throughout the entire preseason. They're big guys. They if you give them a chance to get into the run game, they're going to block for that guy and they're going to open up some big covers. I just think they've been so up and down where we want to be balanced, and then we run a trick play, and then we throw a pass, and then once you get in the third and long or second and long, you really close up the playbook. There's a lot of things you cannot do, and then when you get to that point where you're punting the ball on, when you get the fourth down, it's like hindsight, we should have probably ran them, and then you go back to the next series and the same stuff happens. It's like, what are we doing? Like this is the same stuff we've seen over time. It's that we've had a good running back, we've had a good running game that you could probably lean on. Yet we decide to put it into the hands of an inexperienced guy that is struggling. And what you get is 5 turnovers to a team that Florida honestly should have beat. The defense was damn good. They were good enough to beat LSU the other night. Matter of fact, that defense was good enough to beat really any team across the country. But when you turn the ball over 5 times, when you have a quarterback that is not really dialed in, that's exactly what you get. And that's the frustrating part of what we've been seeing week in and week out.
Has this offensive line been good enough? I mean, we talk about the preseason accolades and hype that they got, which was, top 5 in the country. Are they living up to that?
It's sometimes hard to say because that's the one position on the field that depends on everybody to do their job for the play to be successful, right? Austin Barber has been somewhat of a stud for most of this year. He's done a great job at left tackle. You haven't seen a ton of pressure come from him, right? Yeah. But every now and again, there's a leaky pressure that happens that blows up a play. But then you can go all the way down the line and the same guys are doing the same thing. You go back to 2001 and you can go back and watch it. Miami's offensive line, which was one of the best I've ever seen. We got to play those guys in the Sugar Bowl. We got to see them a couple years later. Those guys were fantastic. And that was kind of like a standard because they were cohesive all the time. Those guys made very limited mistakes. And I think the problem with Florida's offensive line right now is that it only takes one guy to drop a block. It takes one guy to get, to miss an assignment, to not get up to a backer, to do something, and the play gets blown up. And I think we've seen that too many times, that plays have been blown up. There's been a leakiness. There's been a pressure. There's been something that's really rattled your sophomore quarterback and has put you into a spot that you guys aren't going to be successful in that play, that drive. And right now with Florida not being as explosive offensively, every drive counts. There's not one drive that you can count to and say, oh, we can throw that one in the trash and we'll come back. Listen, we struggled against USF. No shot to USF because I think they're still a pretty good football team. But guess what? We got to go see Miami, who's a really good football team. They're really well coached. They're well conditioned. They have the same kind of talent that you have. And if you're not hitting on all cylinders, they're riding a high right now. They're not hitting on all cylinders, then they're going to run you out the building. I've been ran out of the building by Miami. I've been ran out of the building of teams that we were just as talented to because of that very fact. So, and the very problem with that, Allie, is now, hey, coaching for your life if you're Billy Napier, because you lost those first 2 games. You lost 2 games that you could have conceivably won.
Yeah.
And did I expect to go undefeated? I hope for it. We've never done it in Florida history. So, I'm not going to be unrealistic about it. If he went 9-3 this year, 8-4, I would have been super happy because this is a tough schedule. I don't care what anybody says. He said spot the ball because he was confident as well. So I appreciate, I can respect that. But when you say spot the ball, you daggone sure better live up to spotting the ball and getting after it, because when this kind of stuff happens, it wouldn't spot the ball. I don't think it didn't feel like that was the statement that you should have been saying in the first place.
Okay, so I want to talk about that. I was going to ask you about the defense, but you brought this up, and I think this is such an interesting point. So you know better than I know, but I know this to be true, that you play how you practice. And I
Mhm.
just find it so inconceivable that in this past week, Florida had a lights out week of practice like we were told, and then just came in here and absolutely, the wheels fell off. So I just can't fathom what they're actually looking at in practice, or maybe what it is that they're having them practice that then puts this type of product out there, because what how you play is how you practice, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what you see. And then that kind of beckons. If you're any kind of person that pays money, that's a critic that can watch and say, "Hey, on the outside looking in," which we all are to a certain degree. Like what's going on in practice? Is this stuff really happening? Because a lot of times in my history, and I can only speak about myself, when I played in practice, if I had a bad week of practice, it very much equated to the game where there was something bad that went wrong. I'd missed assignments, I had missed blocks, I had plenty of missed stuff in my time. But when you were really dialed in, it made a difference.
Mhm.
That beckons the fact of, like, hey, what's going on now? You can tell with the defense. You've heard a lot about the defense being really good. They learned a lot from last week, from what they did, and carried it over to this week. Those guys are, I mean, they learn from their mistakes. I think that's one of the biggest things that we all want to see. Don't keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. But when you see offensively that we still are doing the same things and making some of the same mistakes, it's like, hey, are these things being addressed? They're on the spot. Are they being addressed right then and there? Because sometimes when you're like, okay, I'll just wait till film to address that fact, you're building habits. You're building somebody into a habit of doing things over and over again, and then when you address it that one time in film room, that's going to be the only time you address it. Because
Right.
that mistake will keep happening unless you correct it right there on the spot. I don't know if that's happening. I don't know if it's not happening. But I do know that when you see this, or when you see the product, you feel like, man, some of these things look like you should have at least addressed it in film room a couple of times, or you should have addressed this on the field in practice
Yeah.
when they were live and in living color.
So my daughters do gymnastics at a decently high clip for their age, and one of the things their coach always says is that you have to do it correctly 100 times to negate the one time you practiced it incorrectly. And I think about that a lot, because if you are, let's say you're correcting it in film as opposed to on the practice field, which again, speculation, but so you do it wrong, let's say 4 times, and then you go into film the next day and you say like, "Hey, okay, listen, you need to fix this." You had the opportunity to fix it after 1, but you did it 4 times. So does that mean you had to do it right 400 times to account for what you did incorrectly? It just, I don't know, it seems like a recipe for disaster. But so I think what Gator fans wanna know now is that, like, where do we go from here? And our defense had a lights out performance. When they've allowed 2 touchdowns in 2 games, and they lost both those games, which is just absolutely astounding. So what is this defense like? How pissed are they? And what does this do to your locker room?
God, you, um, the very problem about that is that you never want to look at a team such as, hey, offense versus defense, or offense does this. Offense will always be tougher to execute because there's so many things that could go wrong. With defense, it only takes one guy to make a tackle, right?
Right,
One guy could bust an assignment. If you're cornerback or linebacker, you can bust your assignment. But
right.
a lot of other guys, that's why they always call it 11 guys running to the ball, because 11 guys can make a play.
Yeah.
On offense has always historically been, on any team, whether you're at the high school, pro, college, Pop Warner, it's always been behind the defense, and they had to play catch up, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's that. So I don't think that this is an offensive versus defensive situation. That is the furthest thing, hopefully, from my mind, because the defense, while they perform well, that could change in a hot second.
Sure.
That really could change in a hot second. Um, but I do think that the offense has to start carrying their weight. We've had so many years, Allie, where we've had good defensive performances. Heck,
Yeah.
under Mullen, we've had great offensive performances, and the defense has lacked. Um, there's got to be a point in time where both meet each other and they're both performing to a standard that they're both happy with and that they're both satisfied with, and they're both winning football games. I don't know if the offense is there yet. Do I know if they'll get there? I'm not 100% sure. Are they in the best spot to succeed? Not every week. Um, can that change? I think it can change, but it does get harder as you get towards more um, tougher opponents, such as Miami and Texas and Georgia, who have really good defenses
Yeah.
and have played some battle-tested games already. This is not going to be a surprise. This ain't a surprise for nobody. Is that if Florida doesn't get it together now, it's going to be a really tough go to be successful in any contest that they play. Every game that they play is going to be a tough contest. You've seen these teams across the country. You've seen what they've been able to do. They've been consistent. Some days, they're not. Some days they are. But a lot of these teams have won football games because they put together a consistent performance. I would love for Florida to put together a consistent performance. I could give a damn if they lost the game. But if
Right.
we saw some, some competency on offense the entire game, if we saw the defense play what they play like they had the last couple of weeks, I think Florida fans would be happy. I really do. Is my standard lowered? Yeah, guys, I apologize for that, but it's lowered a little bit because I want to see them do well. But if the same stuff continues, I'm gonna wake up in the middle of the night. I was up at like 4:30 in the morning thinking about like, man, I really wish this team would be better. And I never wanted to be disinvested in the Florida football after I left because I said I wouldn't be that guy. But ultimately, you're a Gator. You're a Gator. It affects you whether you believe it or not. It affects you more than you like to think it does. And the older you get, the more attention to detail you become to this kind of stuff. So I seriously hope they get it together because it is not going to be an easy road from here on out.
So if you are Coach Napier, what can you do differently this week to bring about some change?
You know, I don't know. I think whatever he did defensively last week, or whatever they've done defensively last week, I think they need to. There's got to be some attention to detail when it comes to every play, and that may seem very broad and very ranged, but that's a simple fact. Miami's one of those teams that can beat the pants off of you. They'll take advantage of certain things, but I think he's got to get DJ on par with being a quarterback at the University of Florida. I think he has to be able to give him a simple enough plan to where he gets comfortable in the game. I think we may see the best of him at some point in time if
Yeah,
they can allow him to start carving people up and he
sure.
gets into. But if you're throwing some stuff around and you're having him drop back almost 50 times a game, I don't know if he's that kind of quarterback. I don't know if it's that kind of system at Florida. Matter of fact, I know it's not that kind of system. So we shouldn't force something that's not that kind of system because it confuses people. Not only people, it confuses your own players. And then when you get down, you look up at the scoreboard, and all of a sudden you're down by two possessions. You're like, oh, it's panic mode. Panic mode means you start making a bunch of mistakes, hence the 5 interceptions that he threw, and then you ultimately look as bad as you did on Saturday.
So one of the bellwethers. Oh, we lost Shannon here. As soon as he hops back in, we'll finish this up. I will look at some of y'all's comments over here. And let's see. And actually, right before we do that, I appreciate Shannon a ton for hanging out, and hopefully he will be able to hop right back in. But before I get to some of your comments, and hopefully Shannon comes back, I want to give Sleeper a little love. You guys are watching our show tonight instead of Sunday Night Football, but you could make money on your phone while the game is on. Grab your phone, download the Sleeper app. Tonight it's Vikings versus Falcons. Go grab the more or less on 2 or more players and win up to 1,000 times your money. Use my code PEEK, P-E-E-K, for 100% deposit match up to $100. Terms and conditions apply, so make sure you see Sleeper's terms of use for more info. Okay, so if Shannon hops back in, we will finish up this interview, but let me check on some of y'all's. Oh, there he is. Let's see. Let's see if we can get Shannon back right here. No, that's okay. Gonna have to work on that Wesley Chapel internet, Shannon. Okay. So I guess okay, next question. I always use this as a bellwether when we feel like we're getting close to the end of a coaching tenure. And I always look to see how many players are singing with the band at the end of the loss. And I feel like we've been able to kind of predict this loss coming with Muschamp when it slowed down, with McElwain. Mullen had like one guy out there. There was maybe a handful of players singing with the band on Saturday night in Baton Rouge. And I know that's something that former players take personally because that's, that is really important. We lost Shannon. But when he comes back, I'm going to ask him, does he think that Napier has already lost the locker room? He alluded to that a little bit on some tweets on Saturday night. So I want to see if he still thinks that. Let's see here over here. Many thanks to Shannon Snell for being on the show. Shannon was a great player and is a wonderful human. He is one of the best of the best. And it does mean something when he criticizes what goes on because Shannon has been an adamant supporter of UF since he's left. Okay, Shannon, so here's the question. Do you think Napier has already lost the locker room?
I like to say, I don't think so. You know, for those guys not to stay and to hear the anthem and to sing along, maybe I get the frustration.
All right, we'll get him to finish when he hops back in. Okay, if we fire Napier and we get another coach, we lose some players. No way for this to not happen. Losing players versus players staying but not being coached to win is a wash. I think that's true. I think at this point, and I would love to be wrong, I would love for Florida to whip off 9 wins. Right? I would be the first person there to cheer that on. I hope that happens. I do not think that is likely to happen. And I think that both of those things can be true at the same time. You can want success for your team, but not be confident that that's what's going to happen. Shannon, you've got you back here, bud. Yep, I can hear you. Let's see if TJ will throw you back up there onto the screen. Hold on one second. Oh, we lost him again. Okay. I want Florida to do well. I want UF to win. I am just not confident that there's a whole lot of wins left on the schedule, and I would love to be wrong with that. But I do agree at a certain point, players not getting coached and winning not happening, you have to cut bait, and you will lose some players, particularly in this transfer portal era. But I do think that that's kind of the cost of doing business in college football right now. And, I think Napier has shown us who he is. I think what Florida football is not going to change from here on out. I think it's going to be a roller coaster under Coach Napier. I think you're going to win some games that you probably shouldn't. And I think you're going to lose some games that you probably shouldn't. And for me personally, I think you need to take care of winning at home. I don't think we've done that particularly well. And I think you need to beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. And I don't think we've done that particularly well. That would be absolutely USF. That would be the Kentuckys, the Mississippi States, the Ole Misses. There's a lot of games that should be automatic wins on this schedule. And then that leaves room for the LSUs, the Miamis, the Texas, the games that are truly toss-up games. And I don't expect that you win every single one of those, but you do have to beat the teams you're supposed to beat so that if you drop one to a team that's a toss-up, it's not the end of the world. Okay, Shannon, the question was, do you think he's already lost the locker room?
I don't think so. I think there's still time for him to completely win them over. When you lose games and then you have a player meeting that was documented, It's not in a great spot. Do I think he's lost them? I think mostly they believe in him still. They want to win a football game. They want to win football games. Has he lost them?
I'm telling you, we're gonna get Shannon some better Wi-Fi. Um, Okay. Never wish job loss on anyone, but Napier won the lottery getting this job. He got paid, cut losses, and move on. He is ruining the Gators. I am not concerned about Coach Napier. He will have, $20 million when he loses this job to keep him warm at night. I do always hate when people lose their jobs, though, because it's the staffers underneath who I worry about. Those are all people that need to have a job to pay their bills, that need, to feed their families and things like that. So it is never, I don't think anybody ever takes pleasure in a staff, you know, losing their job because it is affects so many people. All right, Shannon, so you don't think he's lost the locker room yet. Do you think that there's any turmoil between the players? I mean, I feel like this is something we saw a lot of on Twitter. Do you know, where are we in there? And is there a way to galvanize that? Um, okay, lost him again. All right. You practice till you get it right. You don't practice till you get it right. You practice until you can't get it wrong. Okay, so that's something that my husband always says, and that is absolutely the truth. Scott Strickland cannot pick the next coach. I feel that. I don't understand how you get to hire and fire 3 football coaches. Billy said he was going to make UF the best program in the SEC. He made UF the total opposite. Is it possible that Napier doesn't know what a high level of play looks like? I think about that on a regular basis, especially when I know what he has to be seeing in practice is the product we're putting on the field. But he also was involved with Clemson and Alabama. So I would like to think he knows what a good product looks like. No, you are not the only one hearing the scratching sound. We were catching that from Shannon's phone. Napier, Lagway, and Strickland need to go. Now, honestly, I think I think Lagway is incredibly talented. I think that he's got a cannon of an arm, and I think sooner than later he figures this out. I think DJ Lagway has far too much talent to not figure it out. You could tell he was absolutely horrified by his play on Saturday night. And from all intents and purposes, he's an incredibly hard worker. And I do think that he will put the hours in to try and get this right. And I do think that a large part of this is the amount of time that he missed this summer. But acknowledging that doesn't change the product that we're putting on the field. So we have to figure out a way to put him in situations to be successful as as he continues to practice and get better. At this point, we need pick sixes and scoop and scores if we want to have a chance. Preach. We have a DC and the defense is going great. Billy needs an offensive coordinator, but he's too stubborn. Maybe Napier hates the Gators being so close to LSU for all those years, just eradicating the enemy from within. Strickland stays. He has a new contract. Lagway stays. He can be coached better. Napier goes. Next, what proven SEC coach is there? It's a great question. A lot of you guys are Lane Kiffin fans. Napier has been coaching for his life. He has to know he is comfortable enough to not worry about his job. He knows that, but he's a competitor and he wants to win. And I think that that's important to acknowledge too. There's not a single person on this staff or that plays on this team that doesn't want to win. And are they doing the right things to win? Maybe not. And that's a totally different conversation, but they definitely want to win. If you really think about it, if we just got an OC, we could keep Nape if it's a good OC. If he would let him really call the offense, that's possible. I think that's what we were all calling for the last 2 off seasons. If he loses the next game, that's 3 losses. Season officially over, must be fired. So here's my thing about if he is let go. And again, I'd love it if they just ripped off 9 in a row. And that's what I'm here advocating for. I hope that happens. I don't think that happens though. But I don't know that you fire your coach after games that you thought in a best case scenario were going to be toss-up games. And I think that's what we thought about LSU, Miami, and Texas. So I don't know that we fire him after those 3 games. What I do think would happen, let's say they lose those 3 and they go to College Station and lose, that is when I think it would happen. If Florida lost 5 in a row, they were sitting at 1-5. I think at that point, you really don't have an option there. I think you have to you have to cut bait at that point. And I mean, I can see the argument for why you would do it during the bye week after Texas or before Texas, but I don't think this administration gets rid of a coach for losing games that they thought they were a great chance they were going to lose. I think that they are looking more on the totality. I have been told by a few different people from within the administration that the number they're looking for is 8. So maybe when you get to the point that 8 is no longer a possibility, then you start to discuss. But I don't love being 3 games into the season and discussing who we're going to hire next. That doesn't feel right. I don't want to quit on this team. I would love it. Like I said, if they could go ahead and win 9 straight on out. Do I think it's likely? No. Would I cheer it on? Absolutely. All right. Shannon is back. Let's see if we can get him on here. Shannon will give us one last try and see if we can make this work here. Yes, I can hear you. Okay. All right. So we got the audio. Let's see up. Then now we got the video. All right. Back to the locker room.
Sure.
All right. So do you think there's some division in there? Do you think that that's something that's common when you're not winning football games?
Yeah, I think there is. I don't think you ever want to blame anybody for anything they've done. Obviously, when you're out there, nobody wakes up in the morning and wants to be horrible. But it's kind of like with DJ. Like when you throw 5 interceptions, Allie, there has to be something of, hey, you're now costing us a football game.
Yeah.
There can be support. Now, I will say that they can be supportive and yada, yada, yada. You can throw all that in there. But at the end of the day is if you miss a kick at the end of the game, like your husband is a kicker, right? If he missed a kick at the end of the game, you know what? You have one job.
Yeah.
And your job was to kick the ball through the uprights, or your job was to punt the ball so that it landed inside the 10-yard line. Yeah. If you don't do that, then, why are you here? And I think sometimes at the end of the day, when you start costing your team football games and you have this high-profile spotlight, as a lot of them do, then yeah, I think it can be one of those things where it's like, hey, WTF are you doing? Like, what's going on? Like, why is this happening?
Yeah. Shannon, there's a lot of difference of opinions in former players on social media over the weekend after this game. And I think you and I are pretty aligned on our thoughts on things like this, is that I think it's totally possible to cheer for a team to win, but also not be confident that you're going to get the outcome that you want. Is that where you are with this team?
Yeah, it's been where I was at. As mad as you can be, as upset as you can be because something didn't play out your way, you can always look at the good in it. And you know me, better than a lot of people, is that I don't look for the bad in situations. I look for positives. Mm-hmm. But when you get to a point that the positives, the negatives are starting to outweigh the positives, and those negatives have continuously hindered your development as a program, as a football team, as a job, or as a opportunity that you're presented with daily, that sometimes I think may get taken for granted, then yeah, absolutely. I think criticism is a natural part of this game, and I think every one of those guys knows it. If they didn't, they know it now, right? I think Billy Napier spoke long and ad nauseum about it. But sometimes at that criticism, you need to listen to it. You need to listen to. I'm sure he has enough people on staff that may be in his ear that may talk to him about certain situations. But if it's not, then maybe he can hire another staffer to talk about that. Because at the very end of the day, is that if I'm sure there's nobody down there that's okay with losing football games because they know their job is. And let's just call it what it is. We know that's the case. Yeah. But the fans have every right to criticize, whether you're a person, whether you're a former player, whether you're a former athlete at the University of Florida, whether you pay for a ticket. Like, you've kind of earned the right to have your voice heard, maybe by certain people, but you have the right to say what you want to say. And that's the simple fact, is that people will criticize you for whatever you do. Listen, I'm a operating partner at a barbecue restaurant, right? And if somebody came in and said, hey, this sucks, I have to listen to their criticism. You want to know why? Because they pay money to come in, and if they don't pay money, my staff won't make money. And then my people are out of business, and all of a sudden I'm out of business. I think that kind of goes with the territory. Anything you do, Unless you own it and you're by yourself and you're a team of one and nobody else has anything to say about it, then you'll earn that criticism. At the end of the day, it's your job to fix it. And if it doesn't get fixed, then guess what? You deserve every bit of criticism or every bit of that constructive criticism that comes at you.
So I know that both of us hope that Florida goes undefeated from here on out, but on the off chance that that doesn't happen, what do you think is Florida's record for the rest of the year?
Listen, I firmly believe they have the ability. We saw it at the end of last year, right? We saw it at the end of last year that they just started hitting on all cylinders. Everything just was right in the world. We saw DJ performing. We saw the running game good. The offensive line was fantastic. So there's ability there, and that's the part that's probably as most frustrating. But it's also there's some hope there.
Means it's fixable.
It is. But here's the thing: is that we play some teams that aren't what we played at the end of last year. Yeah. We play some teams that are tougher, that are gritty, that are in shape, that will match us talent for talent. You know, there's still a possibility that Florida can get to 8 wins. There's a possibility Florida can get to 7 wins. What are those wins? I'm not 100% sure. And that's the part that maybe scares me a little bit. But there's also the fact that Florida will be underdogs in every game, and they don't perform. They perform like they did against USF, and they perform like they did against LSU. And if you're looking at that, Florida only has one win on record. So, are you looking for your second win? Are you looking for your third win? Like, bowl eligible at this point is kind of what the hope is for. And if we're really going to spot the ball, then really you got to line that thing up and play football. It starts Saturday with Miami. If you lose to Miami, right, and if you lose in the same ways that you've been losing, there's only one answer.
All right, Shannon. Well, we appreciate you hanging out and for your honesty. And I totally sympathize with how you were feeling on Saturday, and I think that you're so right. And I do I so appreciate you and being willing to share all your thoughts with us.
Thank you, Al. I appreciate you having. And still always go Gators. We want this team to do well. This is not a thing where it feels good just talking about the negatives. There are positives. There's positives on that football team, but they got to prove it. Like I think we're all at the end of our rope. We're all at the end of this line where it's like, we can't endure another season of this because it's where we are, and hopefully everybody on that football team knows how they feel, knows what the goal is, and Billy can share that with them. Otherwise, Allie, we're gonna be looking for another coach.
All right. Well, I will put on some orange and blue glasses on Saturday and cheer very hard and hope that we can beat Miami. But feels like it's an uphill battle at this point the rest of the season.
It does. It's doable, but it's going to be tough. So let's see what happens.
All right. Well, hopefully they really will spot the ball. All right, Shannon, I appreciate you, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Allie.
All right, guys, I'm going to let y'all go in just a second. This is an hour. Thanks for hanging out. This makes me want to do a call-in show because you guys obviously have, some feelings to get out there, and I really appreciate Shannon. He is the best of the best, and he loves this program, has always supported this program, and what he says carries a lot of weight with me because I truly respect him as an athlete, as a person, and as somebody that loves UF. Okay, let me see. I've never had Billy as the answer. Last year's run was a fluke. Not finishing over 500. Napier is making sure we're the worst in the SEC. Let's see. Anything that needs to be done eventually must be done immediately. And that, of course, is the very famous Jeremy Foley quote when he fired Ron Zook after they lost to Mississippi State. Brian Fisher, when is Billy getting fired? The easy answer is hopefully they win a whole lot of ball games. If they don't, after Texas A&M would be my best guess. I'm going to, if they don't pull off a win or two in the next 3, I can't imagine how he stays the coach at UF. And I think the problem at that point then becomes, who do you promote as an interim head coach? And I don't know that there's a whole lot of options on that staff, which is probably an indictment on Billy as well. But I do think that would be an issue. I don't think we are in the time of in college football where you stay on as a lame duck, like it was when Ron Zook was let go. I don't know that there's a scenario where they let him finish out the year after he was fired. So if you choose to make that move mid-season, you got to be prepared for somebody else to take over. And I guess Ron Roberts. I don't know who that would be. Roland Isabel says, thanks, Shannon, for coming on. I appreciate your insight. Has anyone seen an SEC team who has played worse than us so far? We win 3 games max this year. We should beat Texas, maybe A&M. It is kind of wild that Texas looks like one of the most winnable games left on the schedule. I would not have predicted that this summer. We trust Lagway. Lagway's an amazing player. He's in a slump right now, and when he gets out, he'll be dangerous. I mean, I do think that he's too talented for this to continue like this. But unfortunately, Florida's got to win right now. Imagine what Clark Lee would do with Florida's talent. Man, what he's doing in Vanderbilt is very impressive. DJ would only have to ride the bench until he calmed down and started to focus, maybe a few series at most. I did find it interesting that he didn't look to Tramel Jones there. And I mean, going into Death Valley as a true freshman, he has gotten, a half a game of football under his belt in college. So, I mean, it's a pretty intimidating situation and maybe not the perfect answer, but I would have maybe advised trying something because what you were doing wasn't working. Will players opt out after the Miami game? Hey, listen, if the culture is what they say the culture is, no one will be opting out after the Miami game. So I guess we will see if it is what we think it is. Allie, we are not quitting on Napier after 3 games. We're desperately seeking something better after 3.5 years. And I agree with that. I think that we all feel like we're on a roller coaster. The highs are high, but the lows are low. And unfortunately, the lows have been pretty consistent throughout those 3 years. This year I was looking for Florida to beat the teams that they are supposed to beat and go undefeated at home. And undefeated at home was going to be hard because you had Texas there. But if you had just lost that one, I think it would have been okay. But they're not taking care of business against the teams that they should. And that means losing those games that are toss-up games becomes so much more critical. But all right, guys, this was so fun. Thanks for hanging out. We will do a call-in show. Got lots more content coming your way. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel. I appreciate you guys. And as always, in all kinds of weather, go Gators.